Okay, so SAFMEDS. SAFMEDS stands for Say All Fast Minute Each Day Shuffled. It was created by Ogden Lindsley, who was a behavioralist from the University of Kansas. And it was created to help study and create automaticity and automatic recall of terminology. It's a scientifically based study habit that shows tremendous results in the acquisition of new terms. All of the behavioralists or my supervisees that are going to take the board exam use SAFMED cards to study as they work their way through the behavioral analysis curriculum, because there is so much terminology that goes into applied behavioral analysis that it's really hard to read through journal articles or read through program sheets or interventions unless you really get the language down first, okay? So using SAFMED cards are going to make that super easy for you. But there are some really key components to it. So we're going to walk through those components, okay? We're going to take our first term from the 7 dimensions, applied, and we're going to create our first SAFMED card for that. So applied means that we deal with interventions that demonstrate socially significant change. So we're going to create our first SAFMED card. Okay, what I'm going to do is take a piece of paper. Okay, you can use cardstock, you can use an index card. Index cards are fantastic because you can't really see through them. And what you're going to do is you're going to write the term on this side, which is going to be applied. So do that now. Good. And now on the back side of that card, you're going to write the definition. The definition is interventions deal with problems that are deemed socially important. So one more time if you missed part of that. Applied is interventions deal with problems that are deemed socially important. Good. All right, so once you have that card down, you officially have your first SAFMED card. On one side, you have the term, and then on the other side, the definition. Fantastic. All right, so once we have enough of these cards, we're going to be able to use them in a test manner. So let's continue going through the different dimensions of ABA. And then we're also going to talk about graphing, and we can create some terms to remember based off of our graph curriculum. And once we have those things, then we're going to come back and then we're going to test ourselves using the SAFMEDS. All right, so let's go on to our next term. We have applied. Now we need to go on to behavioral. Okay, so again, get a card and then write the term behavioral. All right, once you have the term on that side, flip it over and let's write the definition. Applied interventions deal with measurable behavior or reports if they can be validated. But measurable behavior here is the important part. And here's my card. Interventions deal with measurable behavior. And you can see why it's important. It might be better for you to write yours on index cards so that you can't cheat yourself and see through the card as you take a peek at the term on one side. Remember, you're only really cheating yourself. So, all right, great. So we have behavioral. Let's go on to analytic. Analytic is applied interventions require an objective demonstration that the procedure caused the effect. So again, write analytic on one side, and then the definition on the other. Applied interventions require an objective demonstration that the procedures caused the effect. Okay. Okay. So let's go on to our next one, which is technological. So again, go ahead and write technological, the term on one side, and then on the other, write applied interventions are described well enough that they can be implemented by anyone with training and resources. So again, applied interventions are described well enough that they can be implemented by anyone with training and resources. Okay, we have our technological term card. Ta-da! Let's go on to the next one. Okay, conceptual systems. Ta-da! On the other side, applied interventions arise from a specific and identifiable theoretical base rather than a set or bag of tricks. Okay, conceptually systematic or conceptual systems. Next, okay, conceptual systems is all set. Now let's do effective. Effective is applied interventions produce strong, socially important effects. Okay? And last but not least, generality. In our definition, applied interventions are designed from the outset to operate in new environments and continue after the formal treatments have ended. Okay, so we have our 7 dimensions of applied behavioral analyses SAFMED cards. So now that we have them written, we've got a small stack started here. Let's go over these terms a little. All right, so let's go back to first our acronym. Do you remember the 7 dimensions acronym? Get a cab. Okay, remember that. It's going to come in handy. So, applied. Applied is, again, interventions that deal with problems that demonstrate social importance. So that's what sets our field of applied behavioral analysis apart from experimental behavioral analysis or criminal behavioral analysis or industrial behavioral analysis. Okay? It's the fact that we can apply behavioral analysis towards socially significant behaviors that are important to our culture or the environments that we live in. All right. Next, we have behavioral. This is a very important one because, again, we only deal with behavior that is observable and measurable. That way, we can ensure that it's accountable. It's not occurring due to other things that might be influencing that person. Okay. And by sticking with things that we can only see, we can maintain our integrity. Then we have analytic. Applied interventions require objective demonstration that the procedures cause the effect, okay? Or in other terms, that you know because you have demonstrated one event is responsible for the occurrence or non-occurrence of a behavior. This is often done through experimentation, right? You take baseline behavior, or you know the amount that's occurring right now, maybe say it's aggressions per week. Say it's happening 5 times per week or about once per day. Then you apply an intervention, maybe you do some parent training or you put in a reward system for positive behavior. Then all of a sudden, the behavior dramatically decreases to maybe an average of once per week or hopefully 0 per week, okay? Now, ideally, you would take away the intervention to see if the behavior rose back up. And if it did, then you would be more likely to have confidence in that your intervention really was the main reason for the change. But ethically, it's not reasonable, right? Because if someone's making some socially significant change, especially when it occurs with something like aggression or self-injurious behavior or other unsafe behavior, you don't really want to remove an intervention that's working. So a lot of the times you won't see what we call that reversal design where you withdraw an intervention, okay? Instead, we just really rely on baseline measures and then measures once the experimentation is implemented. So that's our analytic piece. Technological. Technological is that interventions are described well enough that they can be implemented by anyone with training and resources. This is part of the reason why you're doing the RBT training, okay? You're learning all of these terms that go in so that you can understand behavioral and analytic research, documentation, program sheets, interventions, okay? Because we write things with such specificness that anyone should be able to pick up an intervention and be able to implement it the same exact way. And that way we create consistency across the board. The next term, conceptual systems. The field of applied behavioral analysis will probably advance best if the published descriptions of its procedures are not only precisely technological, but also strive for relevance to principle. Okay, so this kind of goes more back into that experimental field of behavioral analysis, but this is still, our applied behavioral analysis is based off of these conceptual systems. So, for example, to describe exactly how a preschool teacher will attend to jungle gym climbing in a child frightened of heights is good technological description. But further to call it a social reinforcement procedure relates it to basic concepts of behavioral development. Similarly, to describe the exact sequence of color changes whereby a child is moved from a color discrimination to a form discrimination is good to, refers also to fading and airless discrimination is better. In both cases, the total description is adequate for successful replication by the reader, and it also shows the reader how similar procedures may be derived from basic principles. So that was a long and wordy way of saying that we can describe behavioral changes based on reinforcement principles that we pull from more basic research, okay? So the next is effective. It's pretty much exactly as it sounds. We want to make sure that the interventions work, that they're effective, that they're creating meaningful, big change, okay? And then generality. I'm sure you've heard this term before. Sometimes we work to generalize behaviors across people, across settings. Perfect example is a little munchkin who's learned that the circle shape is a ball. Maybe that's their first word, ball. But then all of a sudden they overgeneralize that visual discrimination, and you are driving in your car and they see a logo on a gas station sign and they say ball, and you're like, nope, that's a sun, right? But that's overgeneralization. But sometimes we need to actually plan for that, because some individuals with disabilities don't generalize naturally, okay? So we need to ensure that that occurs in learning. And then we also need to make sure that once we teach a specific skill, that it stays and it's generalized and maintained once we take away that intervention, okay? So that's generality. And that pretty much sums up our 7 dimensions of applied behavioral analysis. Please make sure that you read some current dimensions of applied behavioral analysis by Bear, Wolf, and Risley.